Since the dawn of creation, some of God's creatures have wanted to be like God. Intrigued by the serpent's claim that they would be like God, Adam and Eve took a bite of fruit. In an effort to assert their will over God's, they began building a tower to make a name for themselves. Human nature and desire haven't changed since then. Many today realize there has been a sea change in Western culture's worldview. The Judeo-Christian worldview is becoming, or is a minority view. Teichrib writes, "We are witnessing a titanic impact at the crossroads of religion, politics, technology, and culture. Fundamentally, it is a collision of worldviews, and we are all experiencing the shockwaves." As with the Tower of Babel, man again attempts to create the Temple of Man in the age of re-enchantment. Join the people of the book as Teichrib gives a guided tour of the game of gods.
And the guide is with us, along with the illustrious Dr. Donald Williams. And maybe he'll give us issues tonight, or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll give us wisdom instead.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. Whatever it is, we can take it.
Yes.
And with that, Carl, you might want to turn on your mic so you can start making us wise. You got, oh, there you go.
You know, you're a mime. I'd be afraid of you.
That's good, James.
You start doing this pretty soon.
So we are still in chapter 7.
Correct.
Being re-enchanted.
We are being re-enchanted. Yes. Last week we tackled taking a look at the issue of the environment, the green movement, taking a look at some scriptural.
No, here we go again.
Hopefully not. Hopefully you'll come back. Come back.
No.
Not coming back.
So while we're trying to figure out if he's going to make his reconnection okay or not, it's interesting. He's talking about the green movement in light of what we have just witnessed happening in Canada between last week and this week.
Yeah.
And the claims, of course, by some on a particular political side are insisting that this is part of the global warming issue.
Did you say Canada or you meant California?
In California.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, Canada probably has issues, but I'm not up there, so.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, boy, I tell you.
Audrey could really speak better to that, I think. That the issues of Canada than I could.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, California, as they've been saying, oh, global warming. Yeah, the whole cry about it. But
okay, that sounds like it's not. Oh, this is the Colorado crew trying to.
Oh, them.
Yeah, the caffeinated crew have arrived.
Alrighty.
So, I saw a couple of things, by the way, while we're talking about this, and relative to the whole climate change claims, is the CO2 Coalition put out a really good article today, kind of dealing with the wildfires over the past however long. Cal Beisner posted a thing on the average rain over like the last 100 years. There's been almost no variation annually with all of that. Right. And so we just don't really have the evidence to support the claims that are made by the climate activists.
Right. That is true.
So, a question is, can we do better at keeping our environment in good shape?
Sure. We can always do that.
Yeah. We can work at keeping water clean for sure. Yeah. We can do that.
It's a good thing.
And there's Carl. And so we were just talking about the fires in California and how the climate activists are blaming that on climate, not on bad handling of their forests.
Yeah.
Or having water to put fires out with.
Yeah. The top thing that is needed to combat a fire is H2O.
Yeah, this is going to be a difficult night. Carl's frozen up again.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He just came back.
He did.
Is he one of the frozen chosen?
Yeah, I'm gonna call on Don for a moment. I want to see if I can talk with Carl on the phone. Maybe he can connect with us on his phone instead.
Oh, that would work. At least get an audio.
Okay. We just went live on the air too everywhere. So,
Yeah.
Denise is giving us her greetings. Don, might you have a word or two to share with us while I try to track down what we're going to do with Carl?
Well, I think fortunately, I haven't been with you in a while, so I don't know what the last few weeks have.
We've been talking about climate,
But
the green agenda through the re-enchantment.
The central.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
He's back. Let's try again.
Hopefully for a longer period of time.
It's like Hollywood Squares.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
I'm getting busy.
If it's are you still with us?
no, he's
Frozen up again.
isolated.
Isolated, yeah. Oh, I love it, yeah. All right, Don, go ahead. I'm gonna give him a call.
Christianity gets blamed for any environmental crisis that we have because the narrative is that because we believe that we're special as a species created in the image of God, it gives us the right to exploit other species, and so humanity gets accused of speciesism, which is parallel to racism. In racism, you give your race special treatment. In speciesism, you give your species special treatment. And the irony is, of course, that if you give up Christianity, you have given up any logical basis for engaging in any attempt to take care of the environment or to save the planet. Because the basic paradigm that the Christian faith presents, starting in Genesis and moving on down, is that of stewardship. So Adam and Eve were not put in the garden with a right to exploit the other species. They were put in the garden with a responsibility to care for the other species. The whole point of creating Adam and Eve in the image of God was that they were going to be God's deputies, as it were, God's governors of the planet. They were to take care of the garden. They were to keep it and eventually to spread out and have that same role in the planet. So we are the stewards. A steward is a servant who manages the property of the owner for the benefit of the owner. And then he gets rewarded for doing that with his own compensation. But this paradigm of human beings as being stewards of the earth, if you take away God as the creator, if you take away man in the image of God, if you take away the specialness of the human species, you take away the role of steward of creation. So we were put in charge of the earth to manage it and to dress it and keep it, to take care of it on behalf of God, its owner. We are still doing that. The only problem is that after we rebelled and joined the enemy's camp, we are now exercising our lordship over the earth, but instead of doing it as stewards for God and for the benefit of the planet, we're now doing it in our own wisdom, for our own purposes, and consequently often doing it selfishly and doing it very badly. But the central point to remember is that unless we're created in the image of God as a special species with a different relationship to the environment than any other species, if you're trying to solve the exploitation of the planet by getting rid of that background, at the same time, you're getting rid of any basis for us actually taking care of the planet. Because if we're not a special creature put in charge of things by God, then we just evolved like all the other species. Why are we the only species where it's a problem if we're a predatory species?
Yeah.
I mean, so the whole rationale for what these guys want, which is better care of creation, disappears when they attack Christianity as being the reason why people think they have a right to exploit the planet.
Right.
Complete misunderstanding of Genesis and every scripture after that all the way to Revelation.
Yep.
It is, and Carl has been pointing out, one of the things that's been pointing out, everything you say is true and important, is this is literally a new religion. It doesn't have to do so much with really taking care of the planet. It is viewing the planet as Gaia, as mom.
Right.
And when they started the climate thing in 1970, and Carl pointed this out already, built into it, it's written in there that it's to replace Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
That's their intent.
Carl.
Yep. In fact, we tackled that a little bit last week as we took a look at the first Earth Day and the Environmental Handbook, which was the primary text used for the first Earth Day. And here's a physical copy of it. I have gone through it quite extensively because it was such a groundbreaking report, and it was very clear that Christianity had to change or had to be transformed into something else or swapped over for a new religion, because Christianity was deemed as being destructive to nature, and primarily destructive in a couple of areas. One, reproduction, the idea that we have dominion, and bringing those two together, and poof, you see, you're to blame. That's how it goes.
Right.
I was hoping I could really get through a bunch of slides and show you guys a bunch of snapshots into how this has morphed and some of the thoughts behind it. We'll see how far we get. My apologies for all of the little problems here with my connection in. So my first point of contact, and I think I mentioned this in one of the first couple of times that we were together. My first point of contact to try to understand internationalism happened back in 1997 in Vancouver, British Columbia at the Global Citizenship 2000 Youth Congress. And there, Robert Mueller, the former Undersecretary General for the United Nations, and had his hand in the creation of 11 United Nations special agencies, gave school children, educators, and curriculum developers kind of a bit of a boost, and said what we need to do is have a form of global citizenship education in service to the planet. So here's a few things that Robert Mueller told all of us, because this fits this idea of re-enchantment. And if we can get through all the slides tonight, that would be amazing. But I kind of know where this goes. But Robert Mueller told this to the school children. And this is a dialogue between himself and Mother Earth. It was a monologue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting already.
Oh, it was. Oh, trust me, James. So this is what Robert Mueller said. How can you do this to me? You have all this big population explosion all around the world, and I, the Earth, am supposed to feed them. Why did you do this to me? For heaven's sake, we have a population explosion. Please do something about it. We need a ministry of population. Try to convince your people to reduce the number of children. This is one of the biggest problems we have on this planet. He continued on, what are you doing to me? You are killing me. And in certain projections, which have been made by scientists now, some of them say that this Earth will become lifeless and uninhabitable within the next 50 years. So do not forget, that if we continue to live and to waste and to do all the wrong things we do today, by your age, maybe this planet will be finished. Never forget this. You have to be Earth citizens. You have to be the children of Mother Earth.
And what year was that?
This is
1997.
1997. This
Right.
is setting up Canada's.
Right.
Oh no, he froze again.
Ah!
This is a whole thing where it's like in just 50 years, the Earth's gonna be uninhabitable. It reminds me
We heard that 50
of
years ago.
the joke with the picture from some TV show I've never seen before, where it's like, I have lived through 3 apocalypses and
Yeah.
at least 5 ends of days. I believe I will be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had acid rain back in the 70s too.
Oh yeah, I remember the acid rain. I had
Remember?
to-
Yeah. We were going to be gone in, I don't know, year 2000 something.
Oh yeah, it's going to destroy all the fish. I remember that.
Right.
Right.
Or
right.
how about the end of the world in 2012 because of the Mayan calendar?
And what happened to the ozone layer? Did that just come back, or did we
Yeah.
just up on that?
That too. It was all ozone.
No aerosol.
And then the Y2K, right?
Yeah, all kinds of fun stuff.
the computers were gonna explode. I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
50 years from 1997 will be 2047,
We're not that.
which we are 1 year closer to that right now, 2 years closer to that right now than we are to 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And there are serious problems, and there are potential tipping points that could have potential effects. But uninhabitable in 22
47.
years. Not looking terribly optimistic that we're going to make that go.
Yeah.
Right, and they've been doing that since the 1970s. I remember
At
when
least.
it's going to be global cooling. We're going to have an
Right.
ice age in all of northern America. So the best bet is to move to Florida, and you might be okay, or further south than that. And when that wasn't panning out, then they decided, well, it's global warming that's the problem. And then they decided it's just safer just to talk about climate change.
Yeah.
And that
I don't-
somehow justifies throwing soup cans at the Mona Lisa, because
Yeah.
Da Vinci's the problem.
Yes. Absolutely. All right.
All right, so our school ideas for all of
Yeah.
this.
All right. So hopefully this is stabilized. I've just changed a couple parameters, and hopefully things will work out.
All right.
So at this event, Robert Mueller encouraged all the schools that were there to come up with some ideas so that you can save the planet. And so we had some of the schools said we needed to start interfaith groups and global citizenship clubs. One of the schools talked about fostering Earth Pride. One school, and this is elementary school. This is wild. Discussed the need to zero world debt, replace money with biometric cards and Earth points. The group that I was put in with were a number of university students who become our next educators in Canada's education system.
Oh boy.
And one of the students said, talking about the worldview that we were wrestling with, make it a virus, no inoculation, infect everyone. The one school there was a school being represented, and it was right beside my table, and it was okay. So you have to picture this: a round table, and a young girl is sitting in the middle of this round table on the tabletop. And obviously she had gone outside and broken off pine boughs because she had pine branches in her hands, and she was there to represent Mother Earth, and she was welcoming the Council of Human Beings, and all around her were the girls from her school, the girls from her class, and each girl in turn confessed their environmental sins. We don't recycle enough in our house. I wear leather shoes. The one that kind of got me was my dad. His vehicle burns a lot of oil.
Wow.
And then after they had confessed their environmental sins, they went around saying how they would rectify it. We will do more recycling. We will find another product that's sustainable. The one that kind of blew my mind was the girl with the problem the engine problem, saying that if my dad doesn't fix the car by a certain date, I'm going to call the authorities. And I'm like, wow, green fascism, here we come.
Here it is.
So does fear and social change go together? Absolutely. During one of the Q&As, we had a girl. She couldn't have been any more than 14 years old. She stood up with tears running down her face, demanding the end of children. We had a school teacher who, now that she has discovered what a catastrophe bringing her children into the world had been for the environment, she was in tears. If only she had known earlier, she would have considered maybe a different direction rather than bringing the children that she bore into this world. Radical stuff, a radical worldview shift, that's for sure. So last week we talked a little bit about Earth Day 1970, and it was just 2 years after the very first Earth Day when we had the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment from June the 5th to the 16th, 1972 in Stockholm. And this was the first summit at the international level dealing with the concerns of environment, ecology, and man's relationship. There were two Manitobans who were in charge of this event. Not me. I'm from Manitoba. It wasn't me. I was pretty small.
Oh, okay, good.
But Maurice Strong from my province of Manitoba was the Secretary General for the event, and his friend Wayne Kynes from rural Manitoba as well was in charge of the communications side. And so the day after Maurice Strong passed away, this is a number of years ago, I called Wayne up because I knew Wayne personally. And I had also had a day of interactions with Maurice Strong back in 1999 at a World Government meeting. But I knew Wayne very well. And I called Wayne and I offered condolences for the loss of his friend Maurice, because I don't care what you believe. If you've lost somebody, it's going to hurt. Whether you're a Christian or an atheist, or in this case, you're setting the international agenda on environmental issues. Losing a friend sucks. So I called Wayne and I offered condolences. And Wayne opened up to the effect of saying, do you want to know how we had formulated the very first environment summit back in 1972? Do you want to know kind of what made it tick? Well, sure. And so Wayne explained that in the late 60s, mid to late 60s, he and Maurice Strong would go into daily meditations. And I have no way of documenting this outside of what Wayne told me. They would go into their daily meditations, listen to the voice of God. And at one point, when they were each on different sides of the planet, each in their times of meditation during the course of the hours of however it corresponded with their day, God told them to start an environmental summit, an environmental movement at the international level. Can I prove this? Not at all. But it's very, very interesting, coming from literally the first director of communication for the United Nations Environment Program, which was birthed out of the United Nations Summit in 1972. If that's a true claim, it demonstrates immediately that there was an initial spiritual impulse behind this idea.
Big problem.
The United Nations Environment Program, their symbol, and I'll just quickly go back to the slide. It's a man in the center of the planet, surrounded by laurels. So Wayne Kynes explained, why is man in the middle of the United Nations Environmental Program's logo? Because this was part of Wayne's design. He was on the committee that helped put this logo together. And he explained to me that the reason is because the United Nations wanted to send a signal that said to the effect that before we can transform the earth, we have to transform humanity. So that's pretty heady stuff.
Yeah.
We see this idea of transformation in terms of religion and the environment in 1990. This idea had been rolling around for a while, the concept of creating an environmental Sabbath Earth Rest Day. And so in the 1990s, late 1980s and into 1990, UNEP with a number of different denominations, the American Baptist Church, United Methodist, United Church of Christ, and the Protestant Episcopal Church, teamed up with other religions to take a look at what this would look like to have an environmental Sabbath, an Earth Rest Day. And so they created an interfaith Earth worship book, and then they sent these Earth Sabbath kits to churches across the United States. Noel Brown, who is the United Nations, UNEP director at that time, said to a group of faith leaders in Los Angeles,
about faith participation in Earth Sabbath, quote, "We need to create an ecumenical movement." I call it a ecumenical movement.
Ecology.
Yeah.
In
In
the-
service to the earth.
Wow.
So-
now we're worshiping the earth versus God in our
Yeah,
churches.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Should make a commandment about that or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have two comments. First of all, about that girl who broke off the pine boughs from being like, "I am Mother Earth, I forgive you," or whatever. Like, does breaking off the pine boughs count as a climate sin?
I was thinking the same thing. I wonder if Mother Earth said, "Ow, leave me alone," or something.
And then
You're hurting Mother Earth.
yeah.
I mean,
And then secondly,
You pained my pine.
and then secondly, with this whole eco
Exactly.
thing, it kind of makes sense. And I wonder if it has to correspond to somewhat with how the New Age is coming into the church is just infiltrating so much of it, like, from the Enneagram to contemplative prayer, to, crystals and essential oils, basically everything you can find at natural grocers. I wonder how much of it has to do with that.
Well, I think it's a slow numbing.
Mm-hmm.
You slowly
Yeah.
introduce one concept on top of another until you're doing like at Carl's, church up the road from him, doing chakra dances and I guess full moon ceremonies. I think he said shared last week. I'm not 100% certain, but yeah, it's a slow numbing.
well, that's how I think the Christian yoga came in.
Yeah.
Well, Dawn, didn't you interview, I can't think of her name, she wrote the book Shepherds for Hire. And,
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and she was talking about how, yes, environmentalist groups do pay off. And other left-wing groups do pay off to various Christian groups to get their information passed out to the congregations and have that put into it.
Sure.
But it's
Well,
important. It's important to note, though, that not all of the pastors are 100% aware of
This
what
is
they're
true.
buying into.
Yeah.
So,
Probably not.
right.
Well, it's interesting if you watch this movement that Carl's been explaining. It's clearly a religious movement.
Yeah.
It is, and George Muller, who he was talking about, is basically a New Ager.
Mhm.
He was Undersecretary of the UN for 40 years, or not for 40 years, but he was with the UN for 40 years. He's the Undersecretary,
Right.
and his belief was that we needed a one world government,
Mhm.
i.e., the UN. He came to realize that you can't have a one world government without a one world religion.
Exactly.
And so, how do we bring that about? Well, it has to be ecumenical in flavor, in some sense.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And so, he was tinkering with this, as we see. We have the ecumenical movement. I like that, ecumenical movement.
Yep.
So you're bringing kind of liberal religions really back into the fold with the UN and ultimately with the Parliament of the World's Religions,
Yeah.
which is very ecumenical and ecumenical. And when you go there, Gaia is central.
Oh, yeah.
Andre, is Gaia not central in the Parliament?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right.
There he is.
And our trail guide has re-arrived.
All right.
Unbelievable. I am so sorry, guys. Unbelievable.
That's okay. We talked about ecumenicalism already.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
Carl is doing this
Excellent.
on purpose, so we won't think technology is the answer.
Clearly
there you
not
go.
the answer. Yeah.
No,
No
yeah,
kidding.
not working
Ay,
for
ay,
us.
ay.
The AI
Ah,
is out to lunch.
yeah.
Well, we have AI here. It's almost involved.
There you go.
So in the Earth Sabbath Rest Kit, the workshop,
Oh, this
or
is
pardon me,
great.
the workbook that was sent out by UNEP, these are some of the suggestions. They literally had suggestions for prayers, for
Wow.
sermons, for service ideas, and Earth activities that you as a pastor could lead your congregation in. So some of the sermon suggestions as a pastor, if you were going to use the UNEP's workbook, point to various sources of inspiration, to scripture, to wisdom, to spirituality, to the earth itself. Here is one of the prayers. She is the mother of all that is natural, mother of all that is human. I love this one. Service ideas. Invite guest speakers or representatives from other species, i.e. plants and animals.
Oh, I love that. I would love that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hi, venerated pine tree, come and stand
Yes.
before the,
I think that's why we need the psychedelics.
Yeah,
I
you
think
have to.
Mark be a five tree beard. It'd
Yeah.
be like a 10-hour long sermon.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
yeah.
right, MJ.
Bring
You're
your
right.
pets and we start talking. Yeah. We need an interpreter. That's spirits. That's it.
That prayer reminds me of that one pastor who concluded his prayer
Oh,
over the congregation with "Amen" and "A woman."
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So in 1992, celebrating 20 years after the Stockholm
wonderful.
Conference, we had the United Nations Real Earth Summit. And the Real Earth Summit kickstarts, in many respects, today's modern environmental policy making and is completely enmeshed within a worldview. So Marie Strong from my province was once again in charge as Secretary General for that event, and his wife Hannah Strong, she worked on the NGO side, working with global lobby groups. And so on the governmental side, Marie Strong worked with national governments to help give us Agenda 21, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Convention on Climate Change, which is why we have climate change so high on the agenda today. It stems out of this event. Hannah Strong worked with Indigenous leaders, non-governmental organizations, lobby groups to come up with a series of alternative treaties. And I have actually both sets. I've got all the governmental treaties, including Agenda 21, and I have all of the alternative treaties. And let me tell you, as you go through the alternative treaties, it is far more radical. It is incredibly radical, as it is looking to strip any semblance of a Western Judeo-Christian ethos and integrate an indigenous spirituality, a shamanistic spirituality, as kind of the guiding principles for policies. This is one of the statements that was made at the summit. They had a special gathering of indigenous leaders, and this statement was made. The crisis is global. We must therefore transform our attitudes and values and adopt a renewed respect for the superior law of divine nature. Individuals and governments need to evolve earth ethics with a deeply spiritual orientation, or the earth will be cleansed. We believe that the universe is sacred because all is one. Again, at that point, we go back to that sense of oneness that we talked about in the first few times we had together. Bringing around the spiritual side, Boutros Ghali, and yes, that was his name. He was the United Nations Secretary General. He was in charge of the whole thing. This is the statement from his closing speech, and this absolutely rings of religion. You can't run away from it. This is re-enchantment right here in this statement. I should like to conclude by saying that the spirit of Rio must create a new form of good citizenship. We must now conclude an ethical and political contract with nature, with this earth to which we owe our very existence. To the ancients, the Nile was a god to be venerated, as was the Rhine, an infinite source of European myths. or the Amazonia forest, the mother of forests. Throughout the world, nature was the abode of the divinities that gave the forest, the desert, or the mountains a personality which commanded worship and respect. The earth had a soul. To find that soul again, to give it new life, that is the essence of Rio. Hello, wake up! This is much deeper than just simply setting forth regulations, policies, and procedures. It is completely enmeshed in a pagan worldview.
Right.
At the end of the Rio Earth Summit, Mikhail Gorbachev, Stephen Rockefeller, and Marie Strong pulled together a special committee, and for the next couple of years, they hashed through what an Earth Charter would look like. Mikhail Gorbachev described it as a new 10 commandments for the Earth. You can find this online. You can find the Earth Charter. And for those of us who are at the Parliament of World Religions in 2023, there was a special booth set up promoting the Earth Charter, and
Right.
it's still in play. What's very interesting was during 2001, in September, early September of 2001, the Earth Charter was being let's call it initiated. There was a special ceremony, I believe it was in Vermont, at a farm. And you had world leaders and people involved in the creation of the Earth Charter meeting at this farm. And they put the Earth Charter in an ark. It's called the Ark of Hope. And then, because that was the week of 9/11, when the planes hit, the original intention was to bring the ark to the United Nations and put it on display. And so they started to carry the ark, and they carried the ark on their shoulders for 300 miles and brought it to the heart of New York City, and they couldn't take it to the United Nations because of the security surrounding the terrorist events. So they took it, I believe, to the Interfaith Center of New York. And then from there, this ark with the Earth Charter traveled around the globe, going to different United Nations conferences. I'm sorry, but this isn't your idea.
Seen that before.
Yeah, I know where this comes from.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, this is like some type of weird pagan
Hijack.
Yeah, it's a hijack. It's
Sure.
The original is better than the sequel.
well, for sure. Of course.
Way better.
But unbelievable. You know?
Interesting that cultural appropriation is only wrong when other people do it.
Exactly.
There you go.
No kidding. That's exactly right. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry, but this is plagiarism. Flat out.
That's right.
But I mean, this demonstrates we're not talking about politics anymore.
Oh, no.
This is at the most fundamental level a spiritual, religious issue.
Wow.
And so, if you want to see where this language of us saving the earth, how it kind of formulates, you need to take a look at some of the actions that take place around the climate change conferences that take place every year. I'm just going to give you an example for the one that happened in Scotland back in 2021, but it could have given you any of the ones over the last few years, including this last one that we had back in November. So when you take a look at what the newspaper and news headlines are saying, it's when you realize what they're actually communicating, it hits you how messianic their message is.
Right.
So this is just a smattering of what I saw in terms of headlines around that climate change conference. What is COP26 and can it save the world? Churches across Britain call on world leaders to save planet ahead of COP26. Can it save the planet? Who will be there? Can it save the planet? Gen Z on how to save the world. This is the language that you hear over and over again, and you're like, okay, this is demonstrating a messianic impulse. We are indeed playing games of gods. But in all of this, ideas do have serious consequences. And we're seeing that, I mean, it's a worldwide issue, whether it's in my country with our carbon tax, or whether it's in the United States with some of the crazy stuff that's happened in terms of land use policies. And of course, as you guys were discussing earlier, the fires in Los Angeles demonstrates what happens when you no longer have a sound land management policy. Instead, you're setting yourself up for a disaster in the hope to save some fish or to save some other critter or some desert rat. My goodness, there are consequences. Are there environmental problems? Yeah, some environmental problems, and usually local or regional in scope. No question. And we do work hard to clean up environmental issues when all of a sudden we have them impacting our communities. I'm from a farm. I can tell you right now that for part, the farming community works really hard to keep their land healthy, to keep the land as healthy and productive as possible. Same with their animals, animal husbandry, because it actually has an economic value. It's literally property. And because it's property, now there's incentive to do the right thing. But of course, we have all kinds of claims around environmental issues that are global in nature. Climate change, global warming being the most obvious one. And this obviously has become a political hot button. I'm going to give you some quotes to help kind of wrap your head around how this kind of fits. So this is from the International Institute for Sustainable Development, one of the probably one of the most important, probably one of the three most important global think tanks on developing global governance policies around environmental issues. And they're located in my home province of Manitoba. So this is from their document, Empowerment for Sustainable Development. During any issue attention cycle in environmental campaigning, there's a phase in which the issue needs to be strategically exaggerated in order to establish it firmly on an agenda for action. Hello.
Okay. Yeah.
You're being lied to.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we have to push that so that it all of a sudden becomes embedded in the minds.
Attention, yeah.
Right, embedded in the minds of the masses. From the Boston Globe, their environmental reporter, I've become even more crafty about finding the voices that say the things I think are true. That's my subversive mission.
Yeah.
Now, Carl, are these quotes in chapter 7 of the Game of Gods?
Yep, some of them are. Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Okay, I might want to use those in our blog next week.
Yep, absolutely.
Is anybody reminded, speaking of strategic exaggeration, of COVID?
Yes.
Oh no.
I mean, this is a problem with the integrity of science.
Yeah.
That could end up being deeper even than the whole climate issue.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's for sure.
And this fits right here with this statement from Professor Schneider from Stanford University.
Which monkey is he?
He's the monkey in the middle.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Oh my! And this statement came, and this is by the way quoted by Dixie Lee Ray in her book "Trashing the Planet" regarding the issue of the ozone depletion. We have to offer up scary scenarios, make simplified dramatic statements, and make little mention of any doubts we may have.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yep. Here's a couple more. Lester Brown from the World Watch Institute, again from Dixie Lee Ray's book. Building an environmentally sustainable future requires restricting the global economy, dramatically changing human reproductive behavior, and altering values and lifestyles. Doing this quickly requires nothing short of a revolution. And then Judy Berry from Earth First. I think if we don't overthrow capitalism, we don't have a chance of saving the world ecologically. I think it is possible to have an ecologically sound society under socialism. I don't think it's possible under capitalism. David Bauer, Friends of the Earth. Childbearing should be a punishable crime against society. Unless the parents hold a government license, all potential parents should be required to use contraceptive chemicals, the government issuing antidotes to citizens chosen for childbearing. Then called Emery from the Green Party, West German Green Party, said, "We in the Green Movement aspire to a cultural model in which the killing of a forest will be considered more contemptible and more criminal than the sale of 6-year-old children to Asian brothels."
That's pretty true right there.
Yeah.
This just all sounds like a dystopian novel that a 12-year-old would read and think, oh, that was a cool story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is the worldview that's completely embedded, isn't it?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Mhm. No wonder so many kids struggle with anxiety and depression when this type of stuff is being taught in public schools. That, oh, if you do this, 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 and this, then you're a terrible person.
Well, they're
Oh,
appealing to fear.
MJ, you nailed it. And you know, Gen Z is considered to be one generation that has an incredible heavy burden of depression put on their shoulders, and no wonder.
No kidding. Yeah.
No wonder. So back to the International Institute for Sustainable Development and their document Empowerment for Sustainable Development. We must pass from a human-centered to an earth-centered sense of reality and value. We now recognize the larger Earth community and not the human community as normative regarding reality and value.
And there's your problem.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, we're going to be looking at closing up a few quotes here, but this is from the Club of Rome. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention. The real enemy then is humanity itself. And then back to last week with the Environmental Handbook, which was the book that set the tone for the environmental movement for the very first Earth Day in 1970. No new set of basic values has been accepted in our society to displace those of Christianity. Hence, we should continue to have a worsening ecological crisis until we reject the Christian axiom. So with this great big burden of the environment now put on our shoulders, how has the Christian community responded to this? What have we done? We have become the world.
Yeah.
We have not challenged the assumptions. We didn't challenge the assumptions in 1970. We accepted the criticism. We accepted the blame. And then we mirrored what the world was telling us would be the solution to the problem, to our shame. So I'll just give you a couple of quick examples, a couple from the 1970s, and then a few more that's more pertinent. So in 1973, the Canadian Council of Churches made the argument that for us to, as churches and as a community, to save the environment, that we have to make take community ownership of all land. No, thank you. Nationalizing land. I think I know where that comes from. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Karl Marx. And then in 1979, the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, which is an Episcopal church, kind of like the mothership of the Episcopal Church in America, held its very first solar service, a literal Sunday celebration.
Yeah.
James P. Morton, the dean of the church at that time, said this: "I would say, let's talk about the suffering of the earth, the passion of water. Let's talk about Jesus in earth, God incarnate in the flesh of the earth, the flesh of water, the flesh of the elements of creation, and how that creation is suffering, the passion of creation."
Wow.
Oh, give me a break. At this point, you're not you're right. At this point, you're not a church anymore.
No. Forget that.
So in Canada, we have the United Church of Canada, which in many respects followed exactly what James Morton was talking about. This is from their Enough for All worship. It is a responsive reading. Speaking to the earth community, we say, and then the congregation would say, "Brothers and sisters in creation, we covenant this day with you, with all creation yet to be, and with the Creator, with every living creature and all that contains and sustains you." And then we would respond back, "with all that is on earth and with the earth itself." And so down the road from me, about 100 miles away, is a little city called Brandon, and there the Knox United Church, just a few years ago now, had their billboard up saying that we could come for interfaith prayers on September the 27th and engage in a climate strike.
Ooh,
Why not?
absolutely.
Around the climate change conference that happened in 2021 in the UK, September the 5th was Climate Sunday, and almost 2,000 churches from 40 denominations called on the UK government to act for climate. And they held services, and they had responsive readings and prayers and sermons on the environment. In fact, the Presbyterian Church USA issued a new hymn, "The Climate is Changing." We thank you for the people who treasure the earth. We thank you for leaders courageous and brave who know the earth is worth fighting to save. Yeah. So how have we responded? Well, we have everything from the Green Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And Don, I'm going to get you to flip it back, the camera back on myself here.
I can. There you are. Nope.
Oh.
Oh, hi, Ruth.
Hi, Carl. You have changed.
I know. Talk about climate, and here you go.
Yeah, he re-identified himself.
So here's a copy of the Green Bible, and it's on recycled paper. And I think I showed this to you guys last week.
Yeah.
With the writing in green. Yes. That's one example. Here's another one. So in my church is it has Mennonite roots. It's a Mennonite church. We changed the name in the 1990s to a Christian fellowship because we recognize we're followers of Jesus Christ first and not men of Simons, which was a bit of a wake up call.
I'll bet it was. Good for them.
But and it was good.
But at least it didn't go from being a Mennonite to a Womenonite.
Oh, yeah. That would have been worse.
So we received in the mail a postcard, 7 days, it is still good. And this postcard was an introduction from the Mennonite Central Committee, the Mennonite community's largest relief and development organization. And MCC asked that we would help walk alongside of them and go on an earth trek. And this was going to be an online campaign with online activities.
Not exactly a trek.
Well, exactly. And every week you could participate in prayers and activities with your church. At the back of it, there's a little writing that says, learn about making peace with the earth. Discover Christian foundations for ecological justice. Make a difference. Learn about making peace with the earth.
Wow.
I didn't realize I was at war with the earth.
Yeah, I know.
I think there's something a little bit screwy with this thinking. So when that was done, they did me a favor and they published the entire thing in a book. And so it all went from the web into print.
Wow.
Called Earth Trek, Celebrating and Sustaining God's Creation. And it's commissioned by the Mennonite Central Committee. And at the end of every week, they have action items for you to participate in, and prayers that you can read together as a congregation. Here's one prayer. I've got it right here. I'll read it to you. We are the earth, through the plants and animals that nourish us. We are the rains in the oceans that flow through our veins. We are the breath of the forests of the land and the plants of the sea. We are human animals related to all other life as descendants of the firstborn cell. We share with these kin a common history written in our genes. We share a common present filled with uncertainty, and we share a common future as yet untold. Oh, gag me.
Wow.
For some reason, the first line of that prayer just reminded me of The Lion King. I swear, if they had ended that with holding up a lion coming and being like, Simba, I would have just died laughing.
That would have been perfect right there.
We should know better. The Christian community should know better.
Should.
Our theological understanding of the environment, of ecology, is recognizing first and foremost that God is the one who created it. It's his handiwork.
Right.
And we look at Genesis 1:1 to see that beginning point. Here is again, and I'm just going to have to show this to you on the screen. This is the last section of action items for your church. If you wanted to participate with your church in this trek for the earth, so I've highlighted it, but it was already emboldened in the original. So here we go. This week, make an offering to the earth in the form of a prayer or some other gift. What?
That's banned explicitly in the Bible.
What?
Yeah.
What if I bought like new crocodile slippers for the earth?
Yeah, there you go. I got polar bear ones.
We're not Christian anymore.
No.
Let's be honest about that. We're no longer Christian. Our allegiance is now to the earth, not the one who made the earth. The Christian community has stumbled into a Romans 1 reality and is mimicking the fallacy that's laid out, that Paul lays out, worshiping and serving creation and not the creator.
Yeah.
And so as you folks went through chapter 7 in my book, I know that you would have seen some of these quotes and some of the material, but I think it's helpful to actually see it like right in your face this, because it's bold. It's so bold.
It is
I got a question for you, Carl.
Yes.
So, with your knowledge right now today, just about what percent of people that would consider themselves Christians are believing that the earth is conscious? You know, it's actually, they're praying to the earth and things like this, and they're still calling themselves Christians. I know it's subjective, but I'm just saying, do you think, 30%? I mean, where are we going with this? How many Christians are in this camp where they're praying to stuff other than God?
Good question, Jeff. And I couldn't even hazard a guess, but you raise a really interesting question. That's something I think it would be wise to be able to do some social surveys and really probe into the Christian community where people are standing. I know from the survey work that Summit has done and that Barna has done, the results I would guess would be abysmal based just on what they have uncovered.
Let's look at these. You and I did these maybe last week, and I've used them since then. Just so you understand, Jeff, where the church is in general. In 2017, according to Barna Summit Ministries research, only 17% of Christians actually have a biblical worldview. So that gives you a large percentage available to be involved with these other sorts of things. In 2021, Barna noted that 9%, so it went from 17% in 2017 to 9% have a Christian worldview. So it's slipping quickly. In 2022, 1 year later, Barna's Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University found that just 37% of Christian pastors in the United States have a biblical worldview. So you have many who are very ecologically minded because they've bought into the fairy tales, promotions and sales stories coming from the climate change community, which is a competing religion, and they've embraced them.
Yeah, and that's not including, I think, the progressive church, right? I hope that's kind of separate, because I don't really consider them Christians, most of them.
So is it that the climate change issue is one of the really big issues that's pulling Christians into this delusion that the earth is some kind of thing we can pray to?
Hurting.
Yeah. That's part of it, Jeff. But I mean, it's been like we have been soaking in this culturally
for a while,
since 1970. I mean, our television programs preach it, our movies preach it, our politicians push it, and there's big money behind it. This is not chump change. There's a reason why the banking community has been pushing for the idea of things like carbon credits, because they understand there's big dollars to be made in terms of literally trading hot air or supposedly hot air.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it boils
Basically,
down to.
yeah.
You know?
So we had like the fleecing of America, and now we have the fleecing of Christianity. It's like,
Right.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think this drives home a really important point. It's a point that I should shock us out of our complacency, but I think that the hardest mission field to reach right now is a Christian church.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
we did an article earlier, well, maybe mid last year, about missionaries to the church,
Mhm.
and one of the things I pointed out, and I don't know that I've heard anyone else really point this out. Jesus came as a missionary to the family of faith.
Mm.
In fact, he was pretty clear to the disciples not to go to the Gentiles, but to go only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's the family of faith.
Right.
So they came first and foremost as missionaries to bring the family of faith back to the faith, in preparation to send them out as missionaries to those outside of the faith.
Mhm.
Right now, we need to have missionaries to the household of faith.
Right. Right. Same scenario.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll jump back to the slides real quick, and we'll be looking at wrapping up this section.
By the way, I think I'm a murderer. I have a thing here that's got 2 acorns, so I must have killed something. I am guilty. I confess to my crimes.
Well, you know, back in 2013, I was with a group of filmmakers, and we were interviewing Jeremy Rifkin, very, very important thinker, policy kind of analyst, and we were interviewing him, and he was going on about how we have to get rid of a certain amount of cows. We have we have too much livestock in the world, and it's good, and we're creating so much methane because of this global overpopulation of cattle. And so, I mean, we got the whole thing on film, and it was a very serious conversation, a very, very serious issue, a threat to the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it was all done, our little film crew packed up our bags, got in the van, and celebrated by going to Five Guys and having some burgers.
There you go. Awesome.
Hold on, isn't that murder since animals humans? Also, is that kind of racist towards the animals?
No, that's
cows?
no. We have too many of them.
So how do we respond? How do we respond as Christians? We understand first and foremost that God is exalted. He is holy. He is above nature. He is not the same as nature. And we have to have that absolutely front and center in terms of our understanding of who God is, as we have a culture that's constantly bombarding us with this idea that we worship and serve creation. We recognize that nature points to God's majesty. It tells us about him. We see this in the Psalms. We see this that day unto day it pours forth speech, night unto night. We always are seeing that there is a God, and that even his attributes are coming forward. We read that in Romans chapter 1. God elevates man above nature, yet we're still placed in the natural world. And our very first task is to name the animals, which is an act of management. And it's an act of having a stewardship. Literally, the owner going, hey, here you go. I'm entrusting you now with having dominion and having action over top of my creation. So while we're inside of nature, we're part of nature, he has given us an elevated position. And then to recognize that the environmental movement is rooted in a religious, economic, and political worldview that's antithetical to the biblical position.
Absolutely.
And we have to get that straight. We have to realize that as we emulate what the world is saying, we're not actually doing ourselves a favor, and we're not doing the environment a favor either. Because these have consequences that can be devastating, as
Yeah.
we've just witnessed in the Los Angeles area.
Mm-hmm.
So a few verses to think of as we're looking to wrap up. Nehemiah 9:6. You alone are the Lord. You have made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their host, the earth and everything on it, the seas and all that is in them, and you preserve them all. The host of heavens worships you. Isaiah 43. The beasts of the field will honor me, the jackals and the ostriches, because I give waters in the wilderness and rivers in the desert, to give drink to my people, my chosen. This people I have formed for myself. They shall declare my praise. Nature's pointing back to the Creator, and we see this in Scripture. Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech. Night unto night reveals knowledge. There's no speech, no language where their voice is not heard. And then we know this passage out of Romans 1. We looked at it just last week. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. And then Psalm 19, we just read Psalm 19. My mistake for having that double slide in there. But Psalm 104, how many are your works, O Lord? In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. There is a sea, vast and spacious, teeming with creatures beyond number, living things both large and small. Scripture is loaded with these kind of passages.
Oh, yeah.
Where nature's being referenced. God is our refuge and strength, never-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. Awesome passage, awesome verse. And we're going to close with a quote from Francis Schaeffer. How should we then live? And this is what he said. It is my hope that this generation may turn from that greatest of wickedness, the placing of any created thing in the place of the Creator, and that this generation may get its feet out of the paths of death and may live. Amen to that.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem.
Oh, absolutely. Wow.
Yep. So, I will not be around this next Monday. I have to travel. And for those who are caffeinated, I'm coming to Colorado.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
There you go.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the Aurora area. So I'll be down there for a couple of days for sure. But nevertheless, when we come back, if we want, we can maybe tackle... I know we took a look at the Tower of Babel. So chapter 10 is on Cosmopolis. But if we maybe want to take a look at global governance, chapter 11, that would definitely be an area that we could take a look at. So the book is divided in different sections, and part 4 of the book are 4 case studies. One of them being global governance, this idea of world order as a cult. It's its own religion. We can take a little look at that. I think you're going to find some of the things quite fascinating in it. Then we'll take a look at spiritual politics, the interfaith movement, then transhumanism in chapter 14, and then finally we'll take a look at transformational evolutionary culture, which are things like transformational festivals, Burning Man, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if that sounds reasonable,
part of chapter 10 is important though too, because I think the whole Tower of Babel thing is an important element in this whole discussion.
Absolutely. Did we not touch that earlier on? Because if we didn't,
we started it, I think.
Yeah, we started with that.
Okay. Maybe what we'll do is we will
close it up with that.
Yeah, we'll revisit it. We'll revisit it as we consider the idea of world order as a religious movement.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of interconnections there.
Oh, yes.
So what should our assigned reading be then?
Chapter 10?
Yeah, let's do chapter 10. Read chapter 10. And if you have the opportunity, because we won't be meeting for 2 weeks, dive into chapter 11 as well.
All right. Perfect.
Yeah, we'll bridge them.
All right. Is anybody else anything?
No.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off on the public airwaves or internet waves, as it were. And we will see all of you who want to rejoin us in 2 weeks from tonight.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Adios.